Companies and people putting money into politics changes state policy, but state-funded research doesn't change scientific interests. So it's not going to be controversial to many to say that there's a certain complaint or claim or request to have a separation of the moneyed interest with the governmental state interests. They say all that money being put into politics changes policies and changes what the politicians do. But if you're a business and you stand to make something like $100 million from lobbying a certain politician for them to change the laws in your favor for whatever business you're in, then it stands to reason. It's in your best interest, in the best interest of your company, of your stockholders and things like this, to spend up to $99 million on lobbying because you still get $1 million profit that can be spread. Let's say you only have 10 employees or 10 shareholders, then you guys can still spend that $100,000 because you spent the 99 in order to lobby this one politician that has somehow changed regulations and laws to your preference and maybe kept other companies from coming in and taking your spot and whatever. When it comes down to it at the end of the day, that could be the way you earn the most profit at the end of whatever calendar year or whatever span of time that you actually are thinking of. Now, this goes into people looking, okay, now there's an election. I'm going to invest in this politician because I know in a 10-year plan, some of these businesses are not talking about just 1 year, a few months. They're looking down like, I have this company. I plan on this company being open for 50 years. We understand we need access to certain land somewhere, and we have this politician. If we spend enough on his re-election, he's going to help me actually get into this place. If I spend enough on this other politician's election and this certain kind of group that they want, interest group, when I say I'm going to hire X type of females and this because they're running on this kind of social justice platform and things like that, then they're going to give me laws or rules or give me actual contracts. So these things, this is understood. This is understood in that way. Going in that money going into politics changes what the politicians do because they're actually interested in the money. But what I don't understand is how people don't understand the inverse of that situation. If a politician has access to all this money from the government or from these contracts or things like this, they have the whole thing where the government might not do much by themselves, but they are in charge of where funding goes, where taxpayer funding goes, or tax extorted funding goes. Or if they just say, these are the kind of people who you can invest in and get a tax write-off, that will attract private individuals and private money to invest in that thing. If they go into the demographics of their voters and they hear that the most of the people who would vote for me are very interested in climate issues, it has been shown with studies and information that people actually like seeing some of these things. Oh, this animal has been saved by this kind of politician who did this thing. It's a good photo op. So they'll say, hey, we need actual research to see, is this animal endangered? Do we have endangered animals in this area? Then scientists and other people involved in that field who themselves are human beings trying to make a living, they have families to support, they've entered certain fields and put in all this study. They're also interested in that thing as is. Then they'll say, okay, wait, there's a grant that's paying something like $60,000 a year if I study and find what endangered animals exist in this one area. Now they might go there and start looking for those endangered animals. This might be some random shrew, some tiny little animal that they eventually find that has essentially no real effect in that area. Could have been going endangered for entirely different reasons that are not human related, directly human related. But then they find this and then they find one actual human situation. They say, okay, they can track something down like this. They can say, okay, once you fenced off this area, this massive area to have plants and livestock and farming for actual human food production, it ended up fencing off this one-time migration path for these forms of animals, both the predators and this one shrew. And then now that got landlocked or somewhat in one area, and then somehow with the reduction of the land that this shrew had access to, maybe the predators now were getting higher numbers than they were actually reproducing, or there's a certain kind of fern or food that this shrew normally eats to get healthier that it's not getting in this one area. And then you say, okay, it's because of the human involvement. The human farms are the ones that cut this off. And then you can make that direct connection. Then you present that to the politician, and then the politician goes and says, now we have to demand that these farmers open this path and things like this, or we have to have this kind of more research into how to restore this animal and open this conservation park in this place and make it state land where it's protected and things like this, and it's a protected status. You make these you make a big news conference of it, you make a documentary, you make all these flyers, you send them around, you get your base, you get your demographics all involved and excited. And now this attracts more people. Now veterinarians and other people are like, okay, we can come here and we can get a job working at this conservation center. Oh, there's actually construction to actually build the conservation center. Oh, there's actually funding where somebody's buying all these things to actually get into this. Oh, now we can do X, Y, Z from this thing. So that simple thing from that politician wanting something that's involved with this whole conservation thing could end up into this whole thing where there's a lot of money moved around and a lot of people coming in and finding information, finding influence and interest in this one topic due to the money coming towards this topic. So that does affect it. All the scientists and all the veterinarians and all the people involved in that thing are not doing this out of a bad place. They're trying to make a living, they're doing their job, they actually are finding information, but it might not be completely connected. For all we know, this one shrew could also have been cut off from another bigger population of this one random shrew that's in a few states away, but for some reason, that state hasn't had a situation where anyone has actually gone in to actually look and see the details of how this shrew is actually doing. So this is just a simple example I'm using, and it's done on a grander scale. Some of the results that you see in things like climate change, some of the results that you see with the current pandemic right now, some of the things that you see with other things in the past. Think about when there was racial discrimination. There actually were actual scientific studies and people of knowledge. There was actual information being brought out to back up the policies that the state were using to discriminate against other people. If you want to get a more stark example of this, sometimes it's good to go outside of your culture to see something in a different way. Look at what's happening in China right now. Look at the actual information that's being controlled from that state system that's being released to the actual people. Where are the vectors of this information coming out? Look at the current situation right now globally with the pandemic. What are certain countries saying about their actual numbers? How are figures being taken? Is it something with the ability of it? Which countries actually have more scientists and more people looking into the actual information? Many countries have this same issue, but certain countries can fund research into that issue more. And then when you fund research into that issue more, you get more information onto that issue. And then certain countries have politicians that have certain preferences of what sort of information they want to come out from that same one thing we're all dealing with. And you find out that, hey, all of a sudden in this country, it's coming from this location. All of a sudden in that country, it's coming from this other location. All of a sudden in this country, these kind of people are the ones who have it. All of a sudden in that country, those people are the kind of people who have it. So just be aware that yes, companies putting money into politics does change state policy, but state-funded research does also change the scientific interests. The scientists are people. They are fallible in that sense. And in this one thing, I do think there is some kind of scientism on the way some people view scientists, view consensus, view the religions. There are certain things. These people are also human. In general, some of them are smarter than your average human. Those people who are smarter than your average human might understand, if I go against the grain here, if I just outright just say, no, that is a lie, that is not what's there, it could be very detrimental for your own life. And you have to understand these are communities. They kind of police themselves as well. There are situations where people have interests. They say, okay, we're working in this school board, we're already invested in this one narrative. And if you come in and you try to rock the boat, you're not going to get hired by these companies. You're not going to get references. You're not going to get put on these teams. So you have to kind of toe the line for a while. There is this one saying referring to the scientific world that for some of these things to change, for paradigms to change, sometimes a whole generation of scientists needs to die. I mean, somebody has put in a lot of work into this thing. Even for them, they walked through and they said, we had to sacrifice our morals or look the other way to a point where they convince themselves that what they're doing is right for the better good. And it goes beyond that. But it just comes to a thing where it's sometimes this life or death. The world was spinning around the sun before anybody knew it was. For a long time, we were talking about everything spins around the earth. There were other scientists and other people who were actually looking at this and actually found information, because there actually is no actual empirical evidence that the sun spins around us. All the evidence actually shows us that we spin around the sun. You could have a misconstrued idea that everything spins around us because of the perspective that you're seeing, but when you actually get the evidence, it is what it is. But you can present it in a certain way. The presentation of presenting it in that certain way can continue due to external pressures that are very logical, that most people would stick by. How many of you seriously just stand up for something that you think is going wrong in your workplace, in your environment, in your community? If you do, more power to you. If you don't, you kind of understand what I'm getting at here, with people towing the line and people just putting their own pocketbook, their own personal life, their own lifestyle, their own career, over just having that we're just going to stick to truth at all costs. Okay, so that's it for now. Like, share, and subscribe. This is part of my shorties series where I post something short and I expand on it. This is longer. I guess I used to try to keep these with 3.5 minutes or something like that, 3 minutes, but some of these will get longer. But till next one, like, share, and subscribe. Links below to the merchandise store. There should be merchandise on the screen right now if you're watching. Also PayPal for one-time donations. Share this video. Let me know what you guys think about this. Do you have any of these other things, any examples that you've seen where you're like, wow, the actual influence of the state in this scientific research has really corrupted it to extreme levels where you're like, wow, this is very troubling. Okay, goodbye.